Imagine having absolutely everything stripped away from you. Your name is replaced by a number tattooed on your arm. Your clothes are taken, your hair is shaved, and your family is sent to the gas chambers. You are reduced to a starving, freezing, and exhausted body, forced to perform brutal labor while being beaten and dehumanized at every turn. You are surrounded by death every single day. In this ultimate nightmare, where every basic human need is denied and every instinct screams at you to simply give up and die, how do you survive? How do you keep your mind from shattering into a million pieces? In 1942, a brilliant young psychiatrist named Viktor Frankl was deported to the Theresienstadt ghetto, and eventually to Auschwitz. He was a man who had dedicated his life to understanding the human mind, but nothing in his textbooks could have prepared him for the psychological horror of the concentration camps. Frankl lost his wife, his parents, and his brother to the Holocaust. He was subjected to starvation, torture, and the constant, looming threat of execution. Yet, he not only survived, but he also emerged with a profound psychological breakthrough that would change the course of modern psychiatry and offer a beacon of hope to millions of people. He wrote down his experiences and his theories in a tiny, tattered notebook that he kept hidden in his coat. That notebook eventually became Man's Search for Meaning, one of the most influential and life-changing books ever written. Today, we are going to dive deep into this masterpiece. We will walk through the darkest depths of human suffering, uncover the secret to unbreakable mental resilience, and discover how to find profound purpose in a world that often feels chaotic and cruel. To understand Frankl's philosophy, we must first understand the psychological environment of the concentration camp. Frankl observed that the prisoners went through three distinct psychological stages. The first stage was shock. Upon arrival, the new prisoners were thrown into a state of delusion. They clung to the hope that maybe, just maybe, things wouldn't be as bad as they seemed. They hoped they would be spared at the last minute. But as the days turned into weeks, and the brutal reality set in, this delusion vanished, replaced by the second stage, apathy. Apathy was a necessary emotional shield. To survive the daily beatings, the starvation, and the sight of dead bodies piled like cordwood, the prisoners had to emotionally shut down. They became indifferent to everything except the most basic instincts: food, sleep, and self-preservation. They stopped feeling disgust, they stopped feeling pity, and they stopped feeling fear. It was a state of emotional death. Frankl noted that the prisoners who could not adapt to this emotional blunting died quickly, their nervous systems simply collapsing under the weight of the trauma. But there was a third stage, and this is where Frankl made his most crucial observation. After the war, when the prisoners were finally liberated, they didn't immediately feel joy. They felt a deep, profound bitterness and disillusionment. They had survived the physical hell, but they had to learn how to be human again. However, even in the deepest depths of the camp, Frankl noticed something extraordinary. Amidst the apathy and the suffering, there were a few prisoners who walked through the huts comforting others, giving away their last crusts of bread. They were few in number, but they offered sufficient proof that everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms: to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. This realization hit Frankl like a lightning bolt during a freezing, grueling march to a new camp. His feet were bleeding, his body was failing, and a guard struck him for no reason. In that moment of absolute agony, Frankl's mind snapped out of the physical pain and soared into a higher realm. He realized that the Nazis could control his environment, they could control his body, and they could even kill him. But they could not control his mind. They could not force him to hate them. They could not force him to lose his dignity. In the space between the stimulus of the guard's blow and his response to it, Frankl found his freedom. He realized that while he could not change what was happening to him, he had absolute power over how he chose to respond to it. This insight led Frankl to a critical question: why did some prisoners survive the camps while others, who were physically stronger, perished? He realized that physical strength was not the deciding factor. The deciding factor was meaning. The prisoners who survived were those who had a why to live for. As the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche famously wrote, and Frankl frequently quoted, "He who has a why to live for can bear almost anyhow." Some prisoners survived because they had a child waiting for them on the outside. Others survived because they had a book they needed to write, or a scientific theory they needed to finish. Frankl himself survived because he desperately wanted to rewrite the manuscript of his life's work, which had been confiscated by the Nazis when he arrived at Auschwitz. He would sit in the dark, shivering and starving, and mentally rewrite his book, word by word. That mental task gave him a purpose, and that purpose gave him the strength to endure the unendurable. Without a sense of meaning, the human spirit collapses. With it, it becomes unbreakable. This realization became the foundation of Frankl's revolutionary school of psychotherapy, which he called Logotherapy. Before Frankl, the two dominant forces in psychology were Sigmund Freud and Alfred Adler. Freud believed that the primary drive of human beings was the pursuit of pleasure. Adler believed it was the pursuit of power. Frankl argued that both were incomplete. He believed that the primary, most fundamental drive in human life is not pleasure or power, but the striving to find a meaning in one's life. We are not just driven by our pasts, as Freud suggested, we are pulled by our futures. We are driven by what we want to become, and what we want to achieve. So, how do we find this meaning? Frankl outlines 3 distinct, highly practical ways to discover meaning in life, even in the most difficult circumstances. The first way to find meaning is by creating a work or doing a deed. This is the most obvious path. It is the meaning we find in our careers, our passions, our art, and our contributions to the world. When we build something, when we solve a problem, when we leave a legacy, we feel a deep sense of purpose. Frankl experienced this in the camp when he mentally reconstructed his lost manuscript. He wasn't just surviving, he was working. He was contributing to the future of psychology. When you are feeling lost or empty, ask yourself, what can I create? What work can I do? What problem can I solve? Meaning is often found in the act of doing. The second way to find meaning is by experiencing something or encountering someone. This is the path of love. Frankl explains that love is the highest goal to which mankind can aspire. It is through love that we truly understand another human being in their innermost core. In the camp, Frankl's mind would often drift to his wife. He didn't know if she was alive or dead, but in those moments of extreme suffering, he would talk to her in his mind. He realized that the salvation of man is through love and in love. Even if he never saw her again, the love he felt for her gave his life meaning. It gave him a reason to endure. Meaning is found in connection, in deep relationships, and in the appreciation of beauty, art, and nature. But the third way to find meaning is the most profound, the most difficult, and the most uniquely Franklian. It is the meaning we find in unavoidable suffering. Frankl argues that we cannot always avoid suffering. Life will inevitably bring us pain, illness, loss, and tragedy. When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. Frankl shares a powerful story from his psychiatric practice. An elderly general practitioner came to him, suffering from severe depression because he could not get over the loss of his wife, who had died 2 years prior. Frankl asked him, "Doctor, what would have happened if you had died first, and your wife had to survive you?" The doctor replied, "Oh, that would have been terrible. how she would have suffered. Frankl gently said, "You see, doctor, such a suffering has been spared her, and it is you who have spared her this suffering. But now, you have to pay for it by surviving and mourning her." In an instant, the doctor's perspective shifted. His suffering had not disappeared, but it suddenly had a meaning. The meaning was the sacrifice he was making to spare his wife the pain of mourning him. He stopped seeing his grief as a pointless tragedy and started seeing it as a noble act of love. He was able to bear his suffering because he understood its purpose. This is the ultimate lesson of man's search for meaning. When we face a tragedy that we cannot fix, a terminal illness, the loss of a loved one, a permanent disability, we must not ask, "Why is this happening to me?" Instead, we must realize that life is asking us a question. And we can only answer by taking responsibility for our own lives. We answer by finding the meaning in our suffering, by bearing it with dignity, and by transforming our personal tragedy into a triumph of the human spirit. Now, let us bring this profound wisdom into the modern world. We are not living in concentration camps. Most of us are not facing starvation, torture, or immediate death. We live in an era of unprecedented comfort, safety, and technological convenience. Yet, Frankl warned that modern man suffers from a different kind of plague, the existential vacuum. Because we have satisfied our basic animal needs, food, shelter, safety, we are left with a void. We don't know what we want to do with our lives. We suffer from a deep, pervasive boredom and apathy. Frankl called this the Sunday neurosis, the depression that hits people when the busy week is over and they suddenly realize the emptiness of their lives. To fill this vacuum, people turn to superficial substitutes. They chase money, they chase pleasure, they chase fame, or they blindly conform to what society tells them to do. But none of these things can fill the void of meaning. A high-paying job will not cure a meaningless life. A string of superficial relationships will not cure the loneliness of the soul. When we lack a why, we will invent a how to distract ourselves, but we will remain fundamentally unfulfilled. Frankl challenges us to stop asking what the meaning of life is. He says we have it backwards. Life is not asking us what the meaning is, life is asking us. Every single day, every single hour, life is presenting us with a specific situation, and it is up to us to find the meaning in that specific moment. The meaning of life is not a universal, one-size-fits-all answer. It is highly specific to the individual, and it changes from day to day, from hour to hour. Your meaning today might be to work hard on a project that will help your family. Your meaning tomorrow might be to sit with a friend who is going through a hard time. Your meaning in a moment of crisis might be to simply endure with courage and dignity. You are the one who must answer life's questions. You are responsible for finding your own meaning, and no one can do it for you. As we conclude this deep exploration of man's search for meaning, it is vital to understand that Viktor Frankl was not preaching toxic positivity. He was not saying that suffering is good, or that we should seek out pain. He was a man who stared into the absolute abyss of human cruelty and despair, and he came back with a message of radical, unbreakable hope. He proved that the human spirit is infinitely resilient. He proved that no matter how dark the world gets, no matter how much we lose, we always retain the ultimate freedom, the freedom to choose our attitude. We can choose to be bitter, or we can choose to be brave. We can choose to be a victim, or we can choose to be a victor. We can choose to let our suffering destroy us, or we can choose to let it deepen our compassion, our wisdom, and our love. The lessons of Viktor Frankl are a call to action for anyone who feels lost, depressed, or overwhelmed by the challenges of life. Stop waiting for the world to give you a purpose. Stop waiting for the perfect conditions to be happy. Look at your current circumstances, no matter how difficult they may be, and ask yourself, What is life asking of me right now? What meaning can I find in this moment? Find your why, and you will be able to bear almost any how. Thank you for joining this journey into the depths of the human soul. If this profound philosophy resonates with you, if it gives you the strength to face your own challenges and find meaning in your life, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Remember, you are the author of your own meaning. Go forth, choose your attitude, embrace your freedom, and build a life of profound, unshakable purpose. If you enjoyed this book, please let me know in the comments. I'd also love to hear what book you'd like me to summarize next or what type of books you're interested in. Your suggestions help shape this channel, and I'll do my best to bring you the content you want. Thank you for subscribing to Raw Books. Your support means a lot.